Winemaking's difficult because there are no right answers. It's an infinite number of possibilities and flavors, and it's a craft that will never be mastered. It's a journey. It's not just a product.
Hi, everybody. My name is Florencia Palmaz, and welcome to this week's edition of the Wine Stream with Palmaz Vineyards. With me is my brother Christian Palmaz and Jessica Palmaz. Welcome, everybody.
Hey, everybody.
We have a really fun episode for you. We feel like we have found a kindred spirit in another product and couldn't help but make a super fun episode. Joining us today is Madame Fromage, Tanaya Darlington from Philadelphia, and she has made us an amazing pairing of wine and cheese so we can have a wonderful happy hour with all of you this afternoon. So before we get into that, actually I wanted to point out one thing. Because we're doing a wine and cheese episode, I brought out one of my favorite sculptures that was given to me. It is called Chardonnay Charlatan, and it was made by Franco Muñez Ruiz. He's an artist in San Antonio, Texas, also a New Yorker, and he and I had a raucous, fun night one night in San Antonio, and as he got to know me as a vintner and drinking Chardonnay on his patio, he made for me the Chardonnay Charlatan, which was, I thought, very, very fitting for today. It's actually a plastic sculpture of cheese and a wine and a little woman drowning in the glass of Chardonnay. If you ever come to a wine area, this is on my desk. Come and check it out. It's a absolutely ridiculous and fun, irreverent, very typical Franco sculpture, and we figured, why not have some fun and bring it out today with all of you on the wine stream. So before I drown in actually I had no Chardonnay today, so I'm not going to drown in Chardonnay today. Before we get into that, we thought we'd talk about what were the happenings in the cellar this week. We were tasting all of the different parcels last week, which means this week we are racking. Chris, why don't you fill everybody in on what's that mean and how's it work?
Yeah, we were just commenting in the chat before the show started about the aromas and how amazing these cheeses smell and these wines. But really, the amazing aromas are coming from level 2 today, where we're doing, of course, the racking. And so this is something that happens every couple times a year. If you're familiar with, if you've toured the winery, you know our barrels are stored in these outer kind of wagon wheel-like structures. And they're all one high. And we do something kind of unique in the winery in that when we do rackings, it's obviously, we're all about isolation of the terroir, the variable in the vineyard. Well, it goes further than that. It actually goes all the way to the barrel. And so when we do rackings, we have these really unique setups where we move the wine from the barrel to its own stainless steel drum that is sanitized, and it's a really unique process. Most wineries, what they'll do is they'll combine the entire lot into one tank. But if you notice here in this picture, you see the barrel tags. The winemakers take specific consideration over what barrels are, so they may oftentimes and most times will use different barrels even within one lot. So the same wine might get exposed to different styles of barrels, different toasting techniques, different trees, different forests in France where they come from. And so it's really important that we, the winemaking team, don't make changes when they're adjusting that. And that's why when we do our racking, we want the liquid, the wine that comes from each barrel, to basically go back to that barrel. And it's not just to isolate maybe the variables that the winemakers have in terms of their considerations of what the barrel might be doing to the wine, but also, heaven forbid, if we make a mistake and the wine gets contaminated or produces a bacteriological problem, instead of having that bacteriological problem proliferate through the entire lot, we can simply isolate to that one barrel and discard it. So it's a really great program. It's something we've been doing since the beginning. It's a little more intensive, but it's quite important for the wine.
Absolutely. Chris, talk about how, so I see going into that barrel on that photo 2 hoses.
Yeah.
Walk us through how you use gravity and you're at the same level. right?
Exactly. Well, that's a great point. So yes, if you're looking at this this contraption, we call this the bulldog, but basically what it is, since we don't want to use pumps, right? So we don't want to. Particularly, you can argue that the wine's at its most, or at its most delicate state now. It's been in barrel for a year or so, and it's important that we retain that molecular structure the wine is so cleverly developed. And so in order to avoid pumps, what we use is gas. So we use either nitrogen or argon gas, and that's going to sparge into the bulldog there, and it's going to gently pressurize the barrel, and then wine will come out the top. And you notice here, right at the top of the bulldog, you see this little glass tube right before that valve, and that's where the cellar master would typically hold his flashlight. 100 years ago, it would be a candle. And he'll be looking and he'll be adjusting the height of the bulldog, making sure that he's not getting any sediment, right? It's the whole purpose of racking. We want the wine we want to get the sediment out of the barrel and put the wine back so that the wine can be in contact with the barrel again. And it's sort of like the wine's natural fining process, right? It's precipitating out those solids constantly. And that's what we're doing rackings for.
I've always wondered why they call it bulldog. I mean, why not Labrador? Why not retriever? I mean, what's the dog got to do with our racking process?
No, I don't know.
We'll have to ask Tina later today.
Simple people, we don't ask questions, Flo. We just do it.
That's right. We just make good wine. Let's just enjoy some wine then.
But anyway.
So, thank you for that. That's really, it's a great time of year. Exactly like Chris said, it smells amazing. And this is really for us that first sneak peek into all of the parcels before we get into the real depth of the farming and the upcoming harvest. We probably won't be racking or tasting these wines until after harvest. So this is the time for our 1-year-olds to go to bed, go get tucked in for their one last time, and then we'll come and check in on them once we got the babies in. It's smelling pretty good. And truly, this vintage is really looking really nice. I mean, it's got just some beautiful development. She's a very mature 1-year-old, walking already. I got really good tannins. You can tell the mom and me, all my wines are like babies until they get into bottles and then they're teenagers. So let's bring on Tanaya. I can't wait to talk about these cheeses. Talking about smelling good. I had so much fun at the cheesemongers today.
Absolutely. So as we bring in Tanaya, tell us a little bit about her.
Oh, yes, absolutely. So last week we actually got to know Tanaya. She's a cookbook author and blogger specializing in cheese. She'll tell you a little bit more about how she came to find this love of cheese. Tanaya, hello.
Hello. Good to see you.
We're so excited to have you on the show. I had so much fun getting to know you earlier this week. And the second we met on video chat earlier this week, I just got chills. I was like, oh my God, we're going to have so much fun. So, known as Madame Fromage, please tell us about your journey through cheese. How did you become such an expert in the subject?
Sure. My mother is a Swiss citizen, and so I grew up with a Swiss cheese board every Sunday. That was a family ritual. So that got me off on the right foot, I always say. Then I moved to Wisconsin, huge dairy state. And in my early 30s, I moved to Philadelphia, and I was homesick. So I went to a cheese shop here called DeBruno Brothers that someone had recommended to me. And I saw more cheeses than I had ever seen in my life, over 350 cheeses. So I decided I was going to eat my way through the entire store and blog about it. It was the beginning of blogging. I'm a writer, so I love a project. So I did it in about 5 years, and then I ended up writing a book about it. So it's been a wild ride.
Oh my gosh, I love it. So you started with Swiss, then cheddar, and then your brain just went everywhere.
Yes.
Oh, that sounds amazing. And for any of you, please, I encourage you, go check out madamefromageblog.com. We'll have all the details on this at the end of this show as well. She's got an amazing writing style. The second I was reading through her blog, I just felt like, oh, this is going to be so much fun. It just read so deliciously. So, so we shipped you out a few wines last week because one of the things that I find really confounding is, people talk about food and wine pairings all the time. And there's kind of a general consensus, right? Certain steaks with red wines and, maybe some fowl with Pinot Noir. There's kind of a nice consensus of the general rules of engagement when it comes to main dishes and wines. But I always feel like then they go and they're like, oh, cheese. And for some reason, there's this impression that all cheese is great with wine. And, I'm not an expert in the subject enough to explain why I hate certain cheeses with some of our wines. So I thought rather than go down the negative and tell you everything I hate, all the cheeses I hate with all the wines that we have, we'd love to hear from you. What's the logic or sort of, is there a philosophy to approach in pairing styles of wine? And especially, if you don't know a wine right off the bat, how do you then kind of create that logic pathway to select the right cheese for it?
That's such a good question. Actually, in my current life, I work as cheese director for a wine bar, a trio of wine bars here in Philadelphia. And I was just there today for wine and cheese training. And I think the interesting thing about wine and cheese is that you never exactly know until you taste it. You can think something is going to work, but then you can taste it and be completely off. So it is always a little bit of a surprise. I love beer and spirits as well, and I feel that those are actually much easier to pair with cheese. But when you get a cheese pairing that works well with a wine, there's really that moment, at least I feel, Florencia, of euphoria. Like, oh my gosh, this is coming better than the sum of its parts. And it's truly glorious, which is why I think that people love pairing cheese and wine. And I think also because there are a lot of similarities between the way wines and cheeses are produced, there's a real natural affinity. So, one way of thinking about pairing cheese and wine is to say what grows together goes together, and you've probably heard that.
Yes.
Wines, I thought right away, Napa, they're surrounded by cheesemakers. We have to play with some California terroir. I suggested are from your area.
Absolutely, yeah.
But also,
I could probably drive in 2 hours to all the farms that are on my plate right now.
Yes, you were in like a wine cheese group hug right out there. But also another way to think of it, or how I always conceive of it, is do you want a pairing where the two items mirror each other in strength and sort of in the way that they're described, or do you want a contrast? And so the first thing I did when you sent me your emails, I went online, I looked at these wines, I read your descriptions, and from the descriptions, I thought, okay, clean, rain on rose petals. I know what to do there. That's like, something else gentle. And then for like the giant cab, that's really, where people have a lot of challenges because red wine can really trample subtle cheeses, or strong cheeses can really mess up the tannins.
Totally.
So that was like, ooh, that's the one that's going to be really tricky. And I actually got a number of cheeses to try with your red, and actually it wasn't difficult at all. But often reds are like the real challenge.
Yes.
And then when there's a dessert wine or something, you had mentioned honeysuckle in your notes. I thought, okay, right, I can pull a little salt in now. I can choose some cheese. It's going to be a contrast. So you're always sort of looking for balance. Is the balance that they're similar in flavor, or is the balance that they're like teeter-totters and you're playing them all?
I love it. I love it.
Playground. Playground.
I love it. So describe to us your perfect cheese plate. Like if someone's got a blank slate and they're going to a party, because I've seen, on your blog, I don't know, Chris, if you could show some of the pictures of her cheese plates. There are some
amazing.
epic cheese plate photos that you have.
Tania, you work with some of the most amazing photographers. And I mean, these plates are just spectacular, really.
That's a huge cheese party that I host every year in Philly called the Cheese Ball. So that's a delicious cheese ball.
I like that. That's a little bit of your Wisconsin's coming out.
That was from a photography class that I did with a neighboring friend here in Philadelphia, Evan Coleman. Those are cheese boards that I've designed at Tria, the restaurant where I consult.
Beautiful. Oh, nice.
This is Tête du Monde, right?
You got it. I'm impressed. Who said that? Was that Kristen?
Yes, I know.
That is our favorite cheese growing up as a kid. My parents would have the Hirol, and it would be this honor to be allowed to twist the Hirol. It's this, and for everyone on it's not familiar, Tête du Monde, correct me if I'm wrong, it's the flake of a monk, right?
And it's the head of the monk. Yes.
The head of the monk. And the idea was that they had this knife that you would mount the whole cheese on a board, and then this thing would come out, right? You would twirl this knife on the top of the cheese, and it would make ruffles. Incredible cheese. And my father, who trained in Europe for some of his early career in research, came back with this, like, we've got to find this in America. And so we used to have this air freighted into us. It was this whole ceremony for us to have Tête du Monde at the house. And so Chris and I grew up being yelled at, "You're not spinning it right."
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it was like the biggest deal. You got to make sure that you're doing it right because all the adults are watching you, and that was the job of the youngest child, was to make the little florets and make sure they were perfect. Don't mess it up. Too much pressure and they're too thick, too light and it doesn't work. So,
Yeah. We have Tête du Monde trauma. That's a real lovely problem to have.
One of the great cheeses from Switzerland, and I always say it's the only cheese that comes with an accessory.
Yes.
It's a very old monastic cheese. The accessory came from a Swiss engineer. It's not that old, but it is made to this favorite cheese on cheese. Where I work, we serve it as a Mother's Day cheese, so you can give your mother a rose.
Cool. Oh, I like that. That's fantastic.
The flour
it
cheese.
Is amazing.
It's very special.
How cool. Well, of course, we didn't pair with it today. But just for reference, what would Tête du Monde go with?
My guess is that it's going to be your cab. I bet it's also great though with your signature dessert with Muscat, because it's a little funky, and funk usually tends to like a little sweetness.
Yeah. So at the winery, a couple of times we've done dinner parties in which we'll bridge. It's so funny because for us, the transition will always go from our oldest to youngest wines, right? As we're tasting through a flight in a dinner party. So you end up full by the time the biggest Cabernet comes on the table, which is this tricky thing because you've gone through maybe 2 or 3 different cabs in a multi-course dinner. So you end up full. So what we do are cheese plates at the peak of the evening, right? So when the biggest wine, when Gaston comes out, we'll do a cheese plate, kind of let everyone back off a little bit, not quite so much protein. And Tête du Monde is and for me, it's that, so funny, she says, exactly, God, I feel so vindicated. I've been doing this, I thought I was taking a risk. I would put Tête du Monde, and then I would tell people, if you want, we'll pour both the Muscat and the Gaston together. So, if you want to transition into whites early, go ahead. And let this one breathe.
That's what started the sibling rivalry, right? The sibling rivalry was started that way.
That's right. We put Gaston and Florencia on the table at the same time and let them fight it out over the cheese.
One thing to think about is that, like, Tête du Monde is a very meaty cheese. To me, it tastes kind of like beef stew and onions. And so just ask yourself, what wine would I want with a rich beef stew that had onions? And, probably your first guess will be
big guys.
Right. But then you can start to play around, and because it's not too intense, I don't think, pairing it with the Muscat, I think, would be just really lovely. It's like the sort of cheese that can kind of travel through dinner with you to different classes, I would think.
Totally. It's so much fun. So, okay, sorry, I am all over the place. I'm so excited. Walk us, should you want to go through each one at a time? I mean, how you got there? Yes.
I had people over last night, and we put out all these cheeses, opened all the wines. I saved myself small glasses to redo this with you, but I was really curious, how things would taste together. So for the rosé, which I think is beautiful,
Yes, thank you.
you talked about how sort of light and crisp and fresh it was. And so I recommended a goat cheese to you because I think when you imagine fresh, you want fresh cheese, but you could go any rindless cheese here. So I also told you, you could do a ricotta. In California, you have Bellwether Farms that makes beautiful sheep's milk basket ricotta and also cow's milk ricotta.
Uh-oh.
Oh, did we lose Tanaya?
I hope not. Will she come back?
What I couldn't find either of those here in Philadelphia. So I paired a Loire Valley goat, Chevre, which is the white cheese that has a little bit of ash on top, and it was glorious. I also got some fresh mozzarella, fine, but it wasn't like the clean taste of really light, fresh goat cheese, which is like the way you described the wine, kind of like rain on petals or rain on grass blades. I mean, and this pairing, we were on my patio just moaning with like this is, especially with like the first taste at a party or on your patio or here it's on your street sometimes. But you get that feeling of like spring rain coming together.
So we went for, I love that. We went for, from your suggestion, I went ahead and got the Bellwether Farms sheep's milk ricotta. I'm a total junkie for that sheep's milk ricotta, and I was so excited. I was like, I got an excuse to grab a whole pound of it. And for us as well, this is our time of season where we have just so many. So we put it, and then you suggested what I adored was this rose jelly.
Yes, I love that. Cheese and with rosé, you just the colors blend, but also the flavors are this beautiful bridge between cheese and wine.
Just gorgeous, yeah. And something else that I love this ricotta for, like I was mentioning, I bought a whole pound of it because this is our time of year for zucchinis and zucchini flowers, and ricotta stuffed zucchini flowers is one of my favorite midsummer dishes to enjoy from the garden. So I know what to do with the rest of this basket tonight. I'm really excited. Absolutely.
Oh, good. Yeah, such a lovely pairing. I feel like you could do a lot with just any fresh cheese and this wine. We did strawberries with this last night, pistachios. Again, just gentle things that just sort of caress the wine and don't in any way leap over it or overpower the self notes.
I love that. So we didn't bring it on, but in our progression, if we were to talk about the portfolio, I completely love how you respected the delicacy of rosé, right? You caught onto that and you're pairing it so delicately. Talk to us about Riesling. It's a little different, right? It's got a little more edge. It's got a very delicate aroma, but it's got some acid to it and it's got a finish and some real depth to it. Where would you go with a Riesling?
I'm so glad you asked because I love Riesling. I like wines with acidity, and you can always think about where you have acidity in wine, you can bring in acidity in cheese, which sounds odd. And cheese, when we usually talk about it as brightness, but it's acid, just like in wine. And those are your aged goat cheeses. So I love a Riesling with an aged goat cheese. There's one out of the Finger Lakes called Finger Lakes Gold, which is great with the Riesling. There's a terrific one on the island of Sardinia called Pantaleo. It's like pecorino, but made with goat cheese, very bright and sunny. You can have a lot of fun with Riesling, so you can also do funky cheeses, your blue cheeses. It just depends how much sugar there is in the wine. The sweeter it is, the more buxom the cheese can be. If it's a fairly dry Riesling, then I think you want to kind of stay in an aged goat's milk arena or aged sheep's milk. Sheep's milk, you can do anything with it. It is a blank canvas of cheese.
Ooh, that's great to know.
I have sheep's milk here at death that I'm ecstatic with about pairing with your cheeses or with your wines because it goes with everything. I always tell people if you don't know what you're doing at all, pick your favorite wine and get a sheep's milk cheese, one that's not too salty. You're going to be fine.
Perfect. I love it.
You're good to go. Sheep's milk, It's so rich, so it can really stand out to tannins or to any wine. And it's always looking very gentle, pretty much almost very salted. But it's high in nutrients, usually very grassy, herbaceous. It never gets funky and wild, really. So
that's so cool. Here at the winery, our sort of de facto cheese on all of our plates that has been around, since the beginning, is Euphoria, which is a cave age sheep's milk. And I always loved how they spelled it. I thought it was a really great sort of twist in marketing. It's Euphoria, EWE. So whenever guests read it on the menu, they're like, oh, I get it. It's a sheep's milk cheese.
We have it on the menu right now at Tria. Exactly. Oh. It's a great wine cheese. It just sort of can do, it's like a contortionist. Manchego is the same way, a really good Manchego.
Oh, yes. But you actually introduced me to something a little bit edgier and more local for our Cabernet. And I found it. I'm now hooked. This is delicious. I found the Estero Gold at my cheesemonger. And really gorgeous cheese. Tell me about Estero Gold. Who are they?
I was recommended it by a guy who calls himself a cheese sommelier. We've done some cheese travel together in Europe. He was a cheesemonger for Cowgirl Creamery after he retired. And he told me that that cheese sort of imitates Parmigiano-Reggiano, really good Parmigiano-Reggiano, which is also a cheese that is great with big reds. That's because your super aged cheeses are kind of like your super aged wines. There's a lot happening in both the glass and in the hunk, and often they come together really well. I'm so glad to know that Estero works for you. That's Valley Ford Creamery.
Just loved it. And of course, we've got 16 Cabernet, really young, lots of tannins, a lot going on. It's a wine that still wants to dominate. So I love how there's enough presence there with the Estero Gold that it can hold up to it. It doesn't let it dominate. And it's just, beautiful pairing. I've just loved it. Thank you so much for that one.
Two more cheeses for you to play with that would be easy for people to find. One is aged Comté, incredible wine. It's 17 month Comté from the Jura, absolutely stellar. And then the other is Pecorino, and this is a Pecorino called Marzolino, released in March. It's the spring sheep's milk, so very sweet, very gentle. I had that on the board. It's also rubbed in olive oil and tomatoes, so you get these sort of like nice kind of vine ripened notes with your wine, and some blackberry jam. It was mind blowing, just mind blowing.
I went straight for live blackberries because I've got them right now, so I couldn't resist.
These are amazing.
These are in the garden club.
Yeah, these are well.
Yeah.
The sad thing is we're fighting the squirrels. The squirrels are actually better pickers than we are. So these were the few that we found that the squirrels left behind. But yes.
Thank you, squirrels.
Yeah. Oh, just gorgeous. And then let's see. I don't want to rush us because, my gosh, I think we could end up with a bunch of people watching us eat because I'm ready to just dive into this whole thing. But let's.
No, it's okay. Jess and I have been muting our microphones so you can't hear us munching on crackers. It's okay. Yeah.
I'm so jealous.
All right.
So, 18 Muscat. This is a Muscat that we had a lot of fun with. We started making this wine back in 2003, but we actually this year, or the year before blending this one, got together as a wine tasting group and really wanted to challenge ourselves as to what direction we wanted to take our Muscat in. And we shifted the style a little. So this is not an ordinary dessert wine, as you can taste.
Yeah.
So, so thin, bright, light. We wanted it to have some liveliness to it. So very much like you were saying. Loads of, not a ton of acid, but enough to really be present. And then just a hint of sugar. We actually started dropping down the sugar a bit on it and letting it be a little softer on the palate. Really fun Muscat.
Just gorgeous. I love this as wine. This is my kind of wine because I feel like it can go with so many kinds of cheeses. And it has this like this brightness, but also this minerality, it's melon, lime. I just thought this was extraordinary and so much fun. I didn't know when I saw the bottle, but I just feel like it has such nice balance.
Yeah, thank you. Well, and for me, pairing this nicely with cheeses brings it either to the front or the back of a dinner without any problem, right? I mean, this is a gorgeous opener to a barbecue. Even like if you want to start a Sunday afternoon barbecue and, maybe everyone's showing up at 11 or a little bit before lunch, it's sort of a brunch wine. And then the other thing that's beautiful is if you're having a really big meal or a big multi-course dinner and you don't want to do a full-blown dessert that's fussy or that drags you back to the kitchen, a nice fresh fruit and cheese plate and this wine is a beautiful finish to the evening.
Absolutely.
So, and I love blue cheese. And of course, all the other wines we make, blue cheese doesn't play well. So what makes blue cheese so marvelous with Muscat?
I think it's that teeter-totter of the sweet, salty. You think about blue cheeses, they're so good with pears, with cherries, with even like grilled peaches, with figs, with dates. There's just like anything that has a candyish, like a candied fruit or kind of concentrated sweetness is great with blue. What I love about your wine is it's not wildly sweet. Often I have blue cheeses, dessert wines that are syrupy and very sweet, and I think like, I couldn't drink this on my own, but it's great as a pairing. I love your wine by itself, but then you add blue cheese, and it is just something else. Interesting, I tried 2 California cheeses with this. One did not work at all, and one was beautiful. I tried Red Hawk from Cowgirl Creamery, very very lush. It was too intense for the wine. Then I got Baby Blue from Point Reyes, which has a lot of kind of grapey sweetness under its salinity, and that's absolutely gorgeous. Just for something to play with in the future.
Which blue cheese is that? I'm not familiar with that one.
Point Reyes has an original blue, which is a Roquefort style, very intense. Very okay. Yes. I'm curious how that works with it. This is I couldn't find that one yesterday. The Bay Blue is slightly different. It's firmer, less creamy, and to me, it's got a little more sweetness than salt.
I saw it at the Cheesemongers. I didn't buy it because I was like, I know the soft one. I'll take the soft one.
Right. Very luxurious. You'll have to tell me how it works. That's the one I was looking for originally because it's the saltier of the two.
Exactly.
It's a little more sweet. And now that I know what your wine tastes like, I think like, okay, not the saltiest blue, but sort of one level down.
Well, and what I find so fascinating is that I never would have expected to put something so salty with a semi-sweet wine. But you're right; it suddenly brings forward the fruit aromas so much more. You smell a whole new dimension to the wines when I never expected that. That's just beautiful.
Oh, I'm so glad. It's a great cheese wine. I'm like, this is so good. I want to try it with
Well, and I couldn't find in the farmer's market today at the Oxbow, they didn't have any pears. Pears are a little early still for us, but we did find white flesh nectarines, which I was hoping would be an appropriate fruit to pair with these. They're just coming in now for us. Yeah, they're beautiful, the nectarines. And we always felt that nectarines and honeysuckle kind of play. They have a kind of that similar floral edge to them.
Yeah.
So that's why I thought, well, if I'm going to play with it, so that's actually the shots of both our plates today. You'll love it. We're tonight, one of the funniest things that we never expected about this show, in our very first episodes, people started Facebooking the pictures of their cheese boards as they were watching the show.
I love it. It's the best thing.
There were these epic cheese boards, and we were all so jealous that we were talking on camera the whole time. We were looking at all these cheese boards of everybody else going, God, I'm jealous. I want to be one of them. So it only took us 16 episodes to finally be able to enjoy a cheese board.
Now you won't look back or feel regret when you go to Facebook.
Oh, no, I love it. So this is just beautiful. Walk us through why. And when you and I were talking the first time around, I asked just out of the blue, and I didn't realize it was such a good question to ask. Why do I hate brie cheese on all my wines? Like every time I go to a dinner party and people want to put, that I'll bring a bottle of wine to a dinner party and they'll have these epic, beautiful cheese boards. And the second I see that big, gorgeous, ooey gooey brie, I start cringing. Oh God, no, not with my babies.
Right. Yeah, it's funny because it appears at every wine and cheese party, and I think brie is actually really challenging to pair. I mean, the kind of classic French pairing is brie and champagne, and I feel like brie, because it is delicate but extremely rich with a lot of mushroom and grassy notes, it just gets trampled by most wines, or it can cause sometimes a metallic taste with the tannins, I find.
The mouthfeel of Cabernet after brie just kills me.
No good. Probably something to do with the rind. I always feel like brie, it's like often a first or second cheese on a board, and it should be with light things. Anything with some yeasty notes, anything that's grassy, anything with bubbles, So if if you have something sparkling, I think even your rosé, I don't think they would work together. We really need effervescence because it's so heavy. It's almost like a cheesecake. It's so intense in its richness. Usually it's a triple cream, and so it needs a palate cleanser. It needs
Tanaya, I love your blog because you don't just focus on wines. And actually, I was really having a lot of fun looking at what to do, with other things. I mean, you really go way beyond wines. And it's so great. I love this picture. I can't wait to do this myself. I mean, a bottle of gin and, I mean, why not? Anyways, I mean, everybody needs to go over to madamefromageblog.com and just look at the amazing, or, check her out on Instagram. Tell us a little bit. I mean, you don't limit yourself to just wine, and a lot of, food personalities online these days, tend to be kind of rigid in that regard, but you have no limits. You will go anywhere, wherever cheese takes you. You will find a pairing for it.
It's so true. It's so true. I mean, one of my favorite things is just to take a piece of cheese. I've got a fun cheese today at the Bruno Brothers. I'm going to do a special project with them on. I like a cheese that is something unusual. This one has an Asian spice blend in the cheese, and my first thought was like, okay, we have to do something with it that's sort of like a deconstructed stir fry, but in the form of crudité. Can we do sake? I love cheese is such an interesting array of flavors, and it's fun to be able to take one cheese and show people how to use it in multiple ways. To tell the beer lover, take a goat cheese and pair it with a wheat beer. The cocktail lover, take that sheep's milk cheese and put it with a martini. Oh my word, so good. A gin martini with sheep's milk.
I was hoping you would say that.
Amazing. You just got my attention. I was reading comments and I just went, martini and cheese plate, yes, please.
That's right.
I eat a cheese board every day, literally, and I'm ransacking the wet bar, the pantry. I'm always just trying new things with cheese. Like, what can I do? To me, I find it's such a flexible thing to pair with. You are constantly surprised. I find it to be like this very nourishing, protein-rich food that's very convenient. I'm super busy. I have like 3 different things that I do. I can always take cheese, some nuts, some veggies, my cheese beliefs, as I call it, and I'm happy.
We have an old saying in the wine industry that you judge wine with water, but you sell it with cheese. Because it always makes the wine taste better. Oh no! It was actually our very first consulting winemaker gave that to me as advice when going out into the marketplace for the very first time. I was nervous, and I was in Philadelphia. I will never forget. My very first ride with to present to sommeliers in the country was Philadelphia, which is one of the top restaurant markets, most discerning, most competitive. So every single one of the pros there are just absolutely the top of their craft. And I had a really nervous first day, didn't sell a lot of wine. I was stuttering through a lot of my presentations, and I called our winemaker at the time. And I needed advice. I was like, I don't know what to do. I think I was like, Randy, it's so tight. We have such huge tannins in 2001. It's really not showing very well. And so he goes, well, maybe you should take a chunk of cheese and put it in your purse. You could make that. And I was like, yeah, Randy, I'm not sure that's going to work. I just had visions of me pulling a 1 pound block of Euphoria out of my purse and like flecking little pieces of lint off of it as I try to convince a sommelier, to have a bite of cheese. I had these visions of me just on these epic failed ride with sommeliers and restaurateurs. But it's so true. I mean, all wines taste better with cheese.
Something about the dairy and the grape, and it's all from the land, right? And so there is
absolutely
harmony you can create. Not in all cases, but it's so much fun to experiment. Like I said, when you find a great pairing like we had here, you want to introduce friends to it. You become a little more adventurous. You start, as you say, serving muscat at the beginning of a barbecue. And then you throw into the mix with a blue cheese later. It's just a really fun way to, I think, excite people and to learn about an ancillary product that has as much, in many ways, as much complexity as the world of wine.
I know that as an author, and you've done great books that are full encyclopedias of all the different farmers and cheesemongers out there in the country. Can you explain to us a little bit the parallel between farmstead and estate? I know that word means to cheesemakers is a very important term.
Sure. People are always confused as to how to read cheese labels, or they feel that cheese shops are unapproachable. Sometimes I will just say, look for farmstead cheeses. It's a little bit like looking for a single estate wine. It means that the farmer is also the cheesemaker, and the cheese is made right there where the animals are milked. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the best cheese in the world, but often these are extremely beautiful cheeses because the person who is taking care of the land and also aging the cheeses is caring about everything that happens in the life of the milk. And so there's so much attention to detail. So I'm always looking for farmstead cheeses, or if I travel somewhere new, I'll go to a cheese counter and I'll just say, tell me about your local farmstead cheeses. Yeah. And it's just a good starting point. Or I'll say, who's doing small batch cheese making? Because I know that's probably going to be like a small family business or an artisan business. And it's just, again, a good starting point if you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed.
One of the things that early in my wine career that I found so fascinating was being able to see pieces of land, right? Go visit a vineyard and then taste the wines and start making parallels between, smelling the eucalyptus trees that maybe lined the drive, or noticing the predominance of lavender in certain, vineyards of Provence. In cheese, I know it's very much the same because there'll be certain shrubs or grasses that those animals will eat that will then go into the cheeses. And so I always find it's one of the real pleasures of really diving deep into some of these artisan products is seeing the connection between land and the product. Right. And you only see that when you find, like you said, small producers who are raising their animals on the same piece of land, making cheese from that milk every single year, just like we do. For the wineries, we have a legal term, which is estate, which means that every grape has to come from the land that the wine is made on. So literally, within these walls, nothing can come in from the outside or leave and come back. Right. So these are terms that really mean a lot in the world of food, and can be relied upon by the consumer. So
that's a great point. Another great connection, I think, between wine and cheese. And one of the things I love is when you visit a vineyard, you always want to someone's always taking you into the grapes to see the vines, and you get that connection. And I feel like when you have an amazing cheesemaker, the first thing they'll want to do is take you into the pasture, show you the variety of plants, in places where the cheesemaker has dug up the earth to show me how many worms he's got, because he feels like the area is what makes his cheese great. They have like soil pride.
Oh yeah, I love that soil pride. I'm gonna remember that.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful thing to see. The cheesemakers will take you into the pasture and like pull out grass and hand it to you, or eat it, or do these things to show you like this is what my animals are eating. You know that that is a person who's probably making great cheese because they put so much care into that first step.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
You know, as soon as COVID hit, you'll laugh. As soon as COVID hit, and I of course couldn't go to the supermarket anymore. I had to order everything online. The first thing I did was I called one of my Petaluma Creamery cheesemakers in the just the county next door, and I said, sell me a pound block of each one of the cheeses you make. I'll survive for the next couple months. I'm just now finishing some of those blocks of cheese. And it was like I went into crisis mode and went, oh my, I must secure cheese.
Great goal of cheese preservation, right? I mean,
not toilet paper, cheese.
Cheese.
Well, the rest of the world was
Everyone
buying
else
toilet paper.
I hoarded cheese. I have a whole drawer now that is my cheese drawer. Everyone in my family knows, that's the drawer you just cruise by when you want a snack.
That's true.
Oh my gosh. Well, Tanaya, thank you so much for sharing your talent and your genius and your expertise with us. It is such a joy to be able to learn a little bit more. I learned so much with you this afternoon, and I feel like I'm going to go forward with even bolder and more spectacular cheese boards now more than ever.
Great. Well, it was wonderful to meet you. Thank you for the wines. They were beautiful. And this was a really fun thing to be able to do, like across coasts.
Yes.
I could be able to taste California while I'm here on the East Coast and look for cheeses that are in your region. So thank you so much for the invitation. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, my pleasure. And for
Tanaya,
all those of you watching, yes.
Yeah, before you go tonight, you got to tell everybody about your amazing books, because you are, in addition to being an incredible connoisseur, an incredible writer. So share with our audience a little bit about your literature and what you've written.
Absolutely. Yes, I come to the world of cheese as a writer first, and I love language. And so getting into cheese and getting to talk about it was what was exciting to me. So I do some writing for a magazine called Fermentation, various magazines around the country. But probably one of my pride and joys was writing the book House of Cheese with the Bruno Brothers, which is our local sort of Italian-based cheese shop here in Philadelphia. They have a number of locations. So they taught me so much of what I know. And that book is 170 cheeses from all over the world with wine and beer pairings and a lot of wine pairing notes and things like that. So it's a great starter book. It is a lot of fun. I had a great time writing it, and I really wrote it for the lay person to give them like a lactic vocabulary. And
Tonight, where can we find a House of Cheese? I want one myself.
Sure. It's published by Running Press. So you could go to the Running Press website, bruno.com, which is the cheese shop that I work with, or Amazon has it as well. So yeah, that would be a fun book for anybody who has watched this and has become just a little bit more curious and definitely loves pairing wine and cheese. Like that is sort of the market that this was aimed for. And then my last 3 books have been co-authored with my brother, Andre Darlington. Just like you guys are siblings, my brother and I work very closely together. I wanted to write a cheese and wine pairing guide, if you can imagine it, and we got pitched instead a cocktail Bible, and that has sent us deep, deep, deep into the world of cocktails. So we wrote a book together called The New Cocktail Hour, where you can drink your way literally through history as various cocktails emerged, pre-prohibition, prohibition, post-prohibition. We gave ourselves a PhD in cocktails. We're very nerdy kids. Then we did a book with classic movies called TCM's Movie Night Menus to pair cocktails and archival films. A ton of fun. And then our most recent book is called Booze and Vinyl, because we grew up with a record player and we love cocktails. So it's A and B side cocktails for 70 great albums.
All right. Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
All of the above.
I'm about to create the Tanaya section on our bookshelf. I don't know if we've lost her there, but thank you so much. Also, don't forget to follow her on all social media outlets, Madame Fromage. A ton of fun to track. Her images are delicious. Her writing is as impeccable, and really, I've had so much fun watching you and following you on Instagram and Twitter. Look forward to liking and seeing so much more from you. Thank you, Tanaya. We look forward to having you back. Bye. Cheers.
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 Oh, that was just delicious. I love it. I have so much fun. And I wish I had as cool a nickname, right? Madame Fromage. Just delicious.
You can just create one.
I don't know. I think my normal name is a mouthful.
Another story.
Yeah, exactly. One last thing before we go. We did want to also big shout out and thank you to the Robb Report. We were really pleased and excited to see that our Muscat, a little humble 2018 Muscat, was listed as one of the best of the bets of 2020. They only put, I believe it was 20 or 30 wines from around the world, considered the best wines of the world. On that list was Penfolds Grange, Romane Conti, Latache, Chasseau, incredible wines that I have been just an absolute follower of and admirer of. To be put on this list was really extraordinary, and to be considered the best domestic dessert wine was really quite a feat. And we're literally a stone's throw away from Dolce right across the fence. This is the best one in the world. So.
Yeah. Oh my God, I'm going to pay for that later. Thanks.
You're so going to pay for it. This is where you can't control your sister. She's totally out of control.
But congratulations. That is awesome. That is a huge accomplishment.
Yeah. And honestly, it's all to the merit of the winemaking team. And really, I think it was a great opportunity. I mean, we've been at this now for 20 years, and we're still checking in with ourselves and trying to make improvements and making sure.
Well, it wasn't some small task. I mean, we don't normally just 20 years in, like you said, just make a fundamental shift in the style of a wine. I mean, I have to tell you, when you guys said we're going to take our dessert wine and make it 2.5% residual sugar, I was like, why call it a dessert wine anymore then? I mean, it's but you know what? Drinking it and I have to say, I mean, I'm one of those people who never made space on my dinner table for dessert wines. I mean, what for? I mean, we have such amazing cabs and all these incredible wines at our fingertips here in Napa Valley and around the world. There was no time left for these wines. And now finally I'm finding myself actually wanting and craving Muscat right alongside Sauvignon Blanc and Chardonnay. So I really like the direction you took this wine, and I think it's going to I think you know what, it's we shouldn't even call it a dessert wine anymore, because it belongs at the beginning of dinner just as much as it does at the end.
Absolutely. That is absolutely true. And getting the accolade, I think, also is a reflection to the sophistication of the palate, and particularly the American palate. We're no longer all about sweet and gooey everything. The real connoisseurs, and I think the American collector is an incredibly sophisticated, world-class wine drinker now, and just really appreciating and searching for nuanced, complex, more subtle wines. So it is our challenge as producers to continue to deliver to you guys extraordinary wines, because you are becoming extraordinary collectors, and we're really honored to be recognized and honored to be serving and have our wines on your tables. And with that, we thank you once again. It's been an absolute pleasure. This is the favorite part of our week. We look forward to seeing you again next week at 4 o'clock Pacific time. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.